Hi friends, now I will explain what are the features of MongoDB, how organizations are attracting with MongoDB features. We'll see. MongoDB is a document type of database that uses JSON format for data storage. MongoDB is a document database that uses the JSON format to store the data. The following are some key features of MongoDB. Dynamic schema. MongoDB supports dynamic schemas. In other words, we need not define the schema before the insertion of data. We can change the schema of the database dynamically. MongoDB is a schemaless database. Before inserting data, we are not defining any schema in MongoDB. But in RDBMS, before inserting any data, we are creating the table with some structure, with the fields, some limited fields. Then only it is possible to insert the data. That means RDBMS or structured format it will support. We are creating the structure and we are inserting the data. But in MongoDB, there is no structure. It is a schemaless database and also we are not defining any structure. It's a dynamic schema. We can insert the data. That's it. Without schema, insertion is possible. That is the reason dynamic schema. Dynamic query. MongoDB supports dynamic query for documents as a document-based query language that is nearly powerful or more powerful than SQL. MongoDB queries are dynamic queries and also NoSQL is very powerful than the SQL. Why and how? In NoSQL and in MongoDB, there is no joins. We are not using any complex queries. We are using the simplest queries and also no joins also, and also no foreign key support also. Why? Because we are not creating any relationship between two tables. That is the reason these MongoDB queries are simplest queries, are not using any complex queries also. MongoDB supports for dynamic queries. MongoDB supports dynamic query for documents. Embedded data model. MongoDB uses an embedded data model. In other words, we can define a document as a key value pair in another document. That means we have one document. Within that, in one of the field, we'll use set of the key value pairs. In one of the field, key value pair, it could be a one more document also. That means we are embedding one more document inside the document. That is what the MongoDB uses the embedded data model. And use of indexes. We can define an index on any attributes of MongoDB records that increases the speed of the data fetching. MongoDB improves the performance of the database. How? Whenever we are creating the indexes, it improves the performance of the application. That is what the advantage of indexing. In RDBMS also, we are creating the indexing on filtered columns. Tomorrow, whenever we are retrieving the data based on the filtered column and which was created the index, then we will retrieve the data very faster. Why? Because it will directly pointing the particular record and it will fetch, and the application performance will increase whenever we are creating the index. Even in the same manner, In MongoDB also we are creating the indexes on particular field on the particular collection. Tomorrow if we are fetching the data based on the indexed column, indexed field, then we will get the high performance and application performance also it increases. That is what the advantage of indexing in MongoDB. Rich query. MongoDB supports rich queries to fetch the data from database. MongoDB supports rich queries to fetch the data from the database, and also it stores the documents, so we can retrieve the data very faster because we are storing the data in the JSON format. Automatic scaling. MongoDB uses a scale-out approach. This is also known as horizontal scaling. In the scaling out approach, data is distributed across the clusters. Actually, we can increase the systems, and also during this time, the data will be spread across the nodes. That means auto sharding. We can maintain the data on the multiple nodes, so easily it will be scalable. That means automatic, horizontal scalable, and also automatic scaling. Database partitioning. Even in RDBMS also it is there, but vertical scalable, and we can create the table partitioning. Here database partitioning, data will be spread across the multiple missions within the node, within the cluster. That's why horizontal scalable. And also in the cloud also they will use the horizontal scalable mechanism to add one more physical mission, and they will create the virtual missions. Whenever the customers are increasing, then they will add the physical servers within the network, and they will create the virtual missions, and they will share the virtual missions to the customers. They can able to access in the internet. They can able to access the virtual missions in the internet. Data sharing. MongoDB spreads data across the servers without affecting the performance of the application. It removes the dependency on single server. The database never goes offline. In other words, it provides 24/7, 365 days. Actually, MongoDB, we are not depending on any single server. Why? Because even though we are creating the high availability, and we are maintaining the data across the nodes, across the nodes within the cluster, so the data will be spread across the servers, and load balancing, so the data will be balanced across the nodes, and we can request the data from any node also, and if one node goes down, the other node will be available. That's the reason in MongoDB removes the dependency on the single server. If one node goes down, the other node will be available, and also automatic failover is there. Mirroring. We can set the mirrors across a LAN and wide area network. This makes it easily scalable. Yeah, mirroring is supporting, and also we can configure the network in local or wide area network also. So that is the reason it is easily scalable. MongoDB supports many languages. MongoDB supports many languages including C, C++, Ruby, C Sharp, Perl, Python, PHP, Java, JavaScript, Erlang, Haskell. So almost all the programming languages it supports. Then they can use the MongoDB for their services, for the backend services. So whoever is using C, C++, and Java, JavaScript, PHP, Perl for front end, they can use the MongoDB for their backend services. So it supports all the drivers also. Replication. MongoDB supports data replication that has the data within the system geo-based, preferably using non-interactive, reliable process. MongoDB supports the replication and also automatic failover feature is also supporting. Mapping is not required. Conversion or mapping of the application objects to database objects is not required. Conversation is not required in MongoDB. MongoDB supports JavaScript for server-side execution. MongoDB uses JSON format for data storage and retrieval at the client side. In other words, it allows developer to use a single programming language for both client and server side. So we can use the only one language for both the client side code and server side code because MongoDB supports the JSON format and also it's a document based. So they can use the only one language for both sides, client side and server side. One programming language they can use it, that's it. MongoDB supports unstructured and semi-structured data. In MongoDB, we can store the structured data, semi-structured and unstructured data. That is what the advantage is. So we have seen almost all the features. High performance, high availability, auto sharding, auto scalable, horizontal scalable. So almost all the features we have seen. Indexing feature is there. So dynamic schemaless also. So embedded data model is there. Instead of joins, we can use the embedded data model. Dynamic query. NoSQL is powerful than the SQL. So these are the main advantages of MongoDB. That's why most of the organizations they are going to migrate from RDBMS to MongoDB. Why? Because it supports many features. MongoDB is having many features. So high performance. Whenever the data is growing like terabytes and petabytes, MongoDB it can easily handle and also horizontal scalable and there is no performance issue even though if the data is growing terabytes and petabytes also MongoDB can be able to handle. There is no performance issues. It will give the similar performance even though data is growing also, but in RDBMS it is not like that. The performance will degrade, the performance will slow. Application performance obviously it will slow, but if you use MongoDB the performance is good and we have many features: high performance, high availability, auto scalable and auto sharding and indexing. So all these are the features of MongoDB. That's why most of the organizations they are attracting because of these features they are providing. That is what the advantage of MongoDB. That's all. In my coming videos I will explain who is using, why they are using. We'll see. Please subscribe, please share. Thank you very much for watching my videos.